Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We would also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about autism stories. On today's episode, Tanya Valencia joins us to discuss how mobility aids have improved her life, and we also discuss accessibility at music festivals. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Tanya, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure, and I'd love to start off by learning about your story. Where would you say your story in the autistic community begins?
Yeah, as many other late diagnosed autistics, it probably starts from the beginning, but we weren't aware of it. So I would say, consciously, late 2019 is where I started to question, am I maybe on the spectrum? I started to come across a lot of content of other autistic individuals sharing very specific experiences that I've always thought, like, oh my gosh, what a unique thing that I'm the only person that's ever experienced and nobody else has. So catching on to a pattern there, I started to question if maybe I am also on the spectrum. And then the pandemic hit, which drastically changed how everybody's days worked. And it feels a little odd to say that the shutdown was a blessing for me, because I was able to take control of every aspect of my 24 hours because we weren't leaving the house. I didn't have to go to and from and do A, B, C, D, E, like all of the things that have changed since. And that slowdown gave me the space to start realizing that I didn't want to live life at like this 100-mile-per-hour pacing that I had to keep up. That probably like through the summer of 2020, I just was drowning myself in content and like learning and researching. But I was unemployed at that time, so I didn't really have a means of insurance, talking to, and no offense to any of my previous therapists, but like high quality, like very niche type of therapist to help me through some of these conversations. But I did land a full-time job at the end of 2020, which gave me access to insurance, which at the time I was like, perfect. I'm just going to send out a couple inquiries and start the process, which, I mean, as someone who's participating in the late diagnosis experience, you know that that is not how it goes for a lot of us. I reached many dead ends over and over of either, no, I don't take insurance, so it's going to be this unrealistic costs associated with it, or yes, I do take insurance, but you're going to have to wait a crazy long time to even like come off the way. Just so many people experience these things. So I had honestly given up on it. And the very last, pretty sure it was an agency that I was talking with, she said, no, there's A, B, C, D, E requirement. So we're not going to be able to help you here, but you should reach out to this organization called Southwest Autism Resources and Research Center. It's an organization here in Phoenix, but they do a lot of stuff throughout the whole region in the Southwest area. And they are very active in researching for autistic adults on the experience, how they can better provide like formal resources for autistic adults. And through that, I was able to participate in the research, which put me through the diagnostic process. So that was like a very weird backdoor entrance that I found to diagnosis. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And then from there, I participated in, I think it was an 18-week program. My husband is also late diagnosed. He participated in the same research study. It was strengthening skills. So it was just a lot of learning why certain social expectations are there, how you can choose to engage with them or not. So a lot of what SARC puts forward is deeply underlined with acceptance and accommodation. So it's not like, this is how everybody else does it, so that's what you should do as well. But it's more of like, this is how the world functions, and this is how you can choose to engage. Maybe you engage differently, maybe you just don't engage at all. But here's information. So participating in that research side of everything was amazing. Loved it so much. And then they actually have had me participate for the last 2 years on their advisory board as they've been crunching all the research, applying for grants, looking to formalize this as like a readily available product, resource, program. Yeah, so that's been my experience so far.
That's an interesting. I've talked with hundreds of people about their story, and that's definitely a unique entry point to go from research to kind of going through assessment yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an interesting place because I don't technically have an official diagnosis because it was a part of a research program. But for me, it provided the confirmation that I needed, that like all my suspicions, all of my struggles historically, that I'm working with insanely intelligent research team, and they said, you're on the spectrum. So and I'm sure many other people identify with the fact that that confirmation alone can take so much mental load off of you.
Oh yes. So many of us as autistic people have co-occurring conditions that definitely impact our bodies. I've been thinking about that more and more in recent years for myself. So I read where you said you've been using mobility aids for about 4 years now, and the transition was uncomfortable. I'd love to learn more about that because I think so many times people are hesitant to use things that help them. So, what were some of the most uncomfortable parts of this transition?
Navigating the same conversation over and over. I go to tons of EDM festivals, like local and across the nation. So I've got, I would say, like 90% of my social circle is through the EDM scene. And a lot of these people have seen me for years and years, manage through like 3 day festivals, manage through it, right? But they also aren't there for the following week where I'm honestly like out of commission, just down and out. I mean, I used to think that everyone would just be completely, utterly depleted, exhausted. And I mean, yes, people are definitely exhausted after those things, but I started to realize that maybe I was taking a little bit longer than a lot of my peers to kind of not be in pain, only to realize that they're actually just not in pain. So that right there was a crazy realization. So the conversation with a lot of these people of, yeah, I mean, I remember these times, but I actually was like in a lot of pain during that, and having that conversation over and over, and then being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Well, or like 50-50, I'm so sorry, or like, oh, I hope you get better, like those kinds of things. But the other side of that is everyone saying, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you figured this out. Like, let me know how I can support you. So maybe it's like the anxiety of figuring out, like, is that conversation going to go left to them, like maybe kind of feeling sorry for me, or to the right where they're like, all right, that sounds great. Sounds like we're gonna do things like a little bit differently. And I'm on board. So just the social piece of it was the most difficult part of it.
Was it similar? Because I'm thinking back to when I learned I was autistic and just kind of having imposter syndrome. Like, oh no, I'm not autistic. And it's just so
Oh
funny
yeah.
to think back. Was that similar to kind of the mobility aid kind of process?
Yeah, absolutely. Because realistically, I could get through an event, but it's essentially balancing like the risk versus reward. And now that I realize that I have like Ehlers-Danlos, and a lot of things that I've done historically have actually been like degenerative and not good. Like I'm possibly setting myself up for some long-term issues, and learning to prioritize my own personal safety and seeing the payoff of that has been great. But there are many times where I'm like, man, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of, I'm fine, right? Like I just not. But then if I think about it for a couple minutes, I'm like, right. But then that also means I'm committing to being exhausted. I'm committing to like stepping out of A, B, C, D. So yeah, but I got stuck in that first phase for a long time of like, should I even be using this? This is so silly.
Now, I've known other autistic people who use mobility aids, and over the years, it's really been amazing to see how much it's improved the quality of their lives. So I'm wondering in what ways has using mobility aids enhanced your life?
There is an odd control that I have over my sensory experience now. I would get sudden waves of anxiety and I would think like I'm in an unsafe situation or I think I need to like I don't know what I need like and that makes me even more anxious. Like that introspective I never know how to pronounce this word proprioception. I think you know what I'm talking about.
I
But
100%. I'm glad it's not just me. I'm
like you
always
know.
very scared to pronounce a lot of those words.
That's a difficult one for me, but like I can instead of like doing an internal check of like maybe I need to sit down. Do I need some water? When was the last time that you ate? I just start getting so worried. But now realizing that that was my body telling me maybe you need to just sit down and take it easy or maybe like it is actually time to go home. But I used to have to cut evenings short and just miss out on shows specific artists that like I was intentionally there to see this exact artist, but I'm exhausted. I had like a crazy panic attack just because my heart started racing out of nowhere. So being able to just stay and experience a full event without worry is crazy. Crazy change. And I think it's also been great. I have a 13-year-old stepkid who also has a bit of mobility struggles like I do. So it's sort of gaining my own confidence, but being a good example to my own kid who has to navigate the world as a disabled individual. So, and honestly, being an example for them is probably the biggest motivator in all of this. Being an example, being available for them, because the more that I'm sick, the more that I'm stuck in bed, the less that I'm engaged with them. So back to like that risk and reward thing. If I'm gonna go do this festival for a couple of days, that's actually like 3 or 4 days that I'm not gonna be able to hang out with my kid, and that it sucks. It's not a risk and reward that I would like to do anymore. The mobility aid removes those kinds of things. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned EDM earlier, electric dance music, and from my understanding, you're a raver, which I would love to learn more about. I'm wondering if there's ways in which rave culture has impacted your autistic experience.
Totally. And on all honesty, I don't even know if I would have realized that I'm autistic without finding a place in the EDM community. I went to my very first event in 2012. And at that point in my life, I had just taken a step away from organized religion. And I had quite a lot of rules and requirements that were so black and white in my head that I vividly remember walking into my very first event and thinking over and over, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to wear that. You're allowed to be, and just like being not shocked, but like it was like a wave of relief. Like, wow, there is just such a crazy sense of freedom here, in like the most pure sense of freedom of just existing as you are, as you'd like to be, portraying yourself as you'd like to be seen. And that was incredible and definitely started the process of figuring out that it's not just like I need something to hold in my hand, but it's stimming. I enjoy stimming. I need like some emotional release that comes with listening to like some more dynamic music. It's not just like a cool place to be, but there's legitimate like mental and emotional benefits that I get out of the community. And without it, I wouldn't have met my husband. So there's so many things that come back to just being in the community that have in one way or another impacted my journey to figuring out that I'm autistic. Just a place to constantly unmask and realize that that's actually who I am. That was probably the biggest blessing from finding that community.
You regularly attend EDM festivals across the country, I read, some of which I believe you've had positive experiences, and others maybe I read not so good experiences. So, in regards to the festivals that you've had positive experiences with, what are some of the things you've done to make the festival, or what are some of the things the festival's done to make them more accessible for you?
Totally. There, and I would say that there hasn't been a perfect experience out there, and that's me being nitpicky, but we've had really great experiences. In the fall of 22, I believe, my husband and I went to ABGT 500 in Los Angeles, and that was hosted at a large sports stadium. So it wasn't like I was going to an amphitheater or something that was like regularly formatted for music. And when we got there, there was no clear ADA anything, which initially we were pretty bummed about. So we found someone who was working the event and we said, hey, obviously I've got a mobility aid here. How do we get to like the ADA section? And she started to tell us, like, you've got to go here, here, here. And she was like, actually, let's just go there together. Let me just make sure you get there. So that piece there was huge, that it wasn't just like, here's the info, have a good day, but that person wanted to make sure. And I do believe they were on the team, like the Njuna team, so brought on by the actual artists that we were there to see. And they take us down to an elevator that then takes us to the VIP area, which we did not have VIP tickets, but we got upgraded to VIP because of their lack of access. So it was a really great experience for us and phenomenal evening. Rough start, and I still struggle to say that that was an incredible experience because it's not like that was like well thought out for that to be the experience for everybody. So, I guess maybe that's a mixed bag there. Actually, the team that was on site for EDC, Electric Daisy Carnival in Las Vegas, when we went, I'll have to look up their name and I'll send you a message after, but they were very present everywhere. So much so that one of their members came up to me, I think sometime during the second day, and just said, like, how are you guys doing? Have you guys run into any issues? And we hadn't. Everything had been going great for us. And we told them that. And he's like, great, well, here's my card. Feel free to shoot me a text if you guys run into any issues. So their team was not only providing, like, you need to have this here, like the check boxes so that they can like legally make themselves an ADA event, but they were really present on site. And of course, that's a reflection of the organization, but also Insomniac, the production team. They really made sure that was phenomenal. I guess it always comes down to the people who are working the event. Always.
I'm just wondering about like festivals for us as neurodivergent people, like moving forward in terms of, so often we're not even like thought about, or it's just kind of like the bare minimum of ADA. Like, how important do you see in terms of organization of festivals that neurodivergent people be part of the planning committees for these festivals?
I think that's huge. I think it's huge. There's so many times where the logistics ahead of time, the maps that are brought out, the type of information that's available, there's so much read between the lines, or like, I hope you've gone to enough festivals and you're seasoned enough to understand that, like, this type of terrain, like, there's just so much that isn't well documented, and it's always just advertised as like, buy your ticket, we'll see you soon. And then it's like, you have to have the culture knowledge to successfully have like a great experience. I am doing my best to figure out how to put my own experiences into advice, I guess, because obviously I've had many bad going outs. I've had many unsuccessful evenings out where I either like didn't make it into the event venue because of access issues, or had to leave early because like it was oversold, and suddenly there's like, it's unsafe for me to be physically inside. Like, just so many things that production teams can overlook easily, but can drastically impact the disabled and autistic community. So I've got so many ideas of how things could change.
Yeah, well, I read a wonderful article that you wrote about one of the festivals, and
Next clip,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
no.
That was gnarly.
So, as autistic people, I think finding those that we can be trust to be part of our support network can be very challenging. So, in thinking about that, I read about that you have a medical and psychiatric service dog. What
Yeah.
types of things does this service dog do to be helpful to you as part of your support network?
Yeah, so I have Caspian. He is a 5-year-old. He was advertised as a husky. He's not. He's definitely like a pit mix, but he's beautiful. He, I would say the most important thing he provides me is constant companionship. It's an odd requirement that people who aren't autistic probably don't understand, of like needing someone to comfort you or like something to comfort you. And we can potentially get caught up in like romantic relationships where we become like codependent because we're searching for something that isn't quite appropriate for that exact relationship. But realizing that it was like a psychological and emotional need that had to do with like my own disabilities helped me realize that a service dog could potentially be the solution there. And ironically, I actually started the whole process of training Caspian before I even knew I was autistic. And if anything, bringing him on and having his companionship and a lot of the different ways that he's able to soothe me through like the way that his fur lays is so perfect, and like the alignment is so soothing, and he's very tuned into my own like emotions, nervous system, and often he'll even alert me that I am anxious before I kind of tune myself into that. Suddenly he's like kind of pushing just a little bit of weight on me, and I'm like, oh man, I've been spinning my wheels a little too hard on this like work thing, and I'm gonna just take a step back. So he kind of like clues me back into my own body. And then he also provides deep pressure therapy. So if I'm maybe like just I've missed a couple of steps and I'm really starting to get anxious, possibly like mid panic attack, who knows where, like when it's needed, he'll lay across my legs and help with the blood pressure, kind of like lowering it. So that like pressure feel, it's, and many autistic people enjoy that. I do too. So he's great.
And lastly, how can our listeners learn about you beyond this interview?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram page. My handle is audiotism_Tanya. That's where I'm most active. I share a lot of content about my personal life, being a mom, being married to a neurodivergent person, just a lot of the different aspects of my life that are, I wouldn't say impacted by being autistic, but educated about being autistic. And I also have started recently posting content on my LinkedIn page, more focused around disability access in the workplace, inclusive practices, things like that. So I've got a couple different types of content out there, depending on what people are interested in.
Well, I've been interested in all of your content, so keep up the great work. And it was a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better and learn about your story. So thanks so much.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Thanks so much, Tanya, for the conversation. To learn more about Tanya, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you and would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode on what barriers to accessibility have you faced at music festivals. Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self-directed, purpose-driven lives through our customized life coaching and community groups. Our distinct approach prioritizes each client's unique goals and preferences, fostering a sense of agency and promoting self-advocacy. Coaches work collaboratively with clients to develop personalized strategies and tools that can help with executive functioning, emotional regulation, relationship building, stress management, and much more. We also support parents and partners of autistic individuals by providing insights and guidance to bridge communication gaps and nurture mutual understanding. With our accessible remote services, individuals from any location can receive the assistance and mentoring they need. Join us today to experience judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.